website along with the slides. I'd like to make sure that your mic is muted and that your camera is off during the presentation. And so for questions, please use the chat function. You will see the chat function at the top of your screen, and we can take questions throughout the presentation, but please put your question in the chat, and Samantha, one of our health promotion specialists, will let us know if there's any questions in there. As well, there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. So thanks very much for that. I would also like to point out that if you're having any technical difficulties, please post in this chat as well. And again, Samantha will help you out. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people who benefit greatly from the shared resources of this land, covered by the treaties of peace and friendship. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Child Safety Link before we start. So Child Safety Link is a maritime-wide, Atlantic when appropriate, child and youth injury prevention program of IWK Health. Our goal is to reduce the incidence and severity of injuries, unintentional injuries to children and youth. Our priority areas are to keep children safe at home. And so our home safety work includes poisoning prevention and falls prevention. We look at on the road, and our own on-the-road safety work includes child passenger safety and pedestrian safety. Our at play work includes concussion prevention and ATV safety. And at school is our safety at school work will address all of our topic areas in the school context. So this priority area is new for Child Safety Link, and we will have a better sense of our at school work in the new year. So on November the 20th, Child Safety Link will turn 20 years old. And to celebrate our 20th birthday, we decided to host a webinar series focused on children's injury prevention. Through these webinars, we aim to highlight the importance of injury prevention and promote our injury prevention resources. So now I would like to introduce our speakers today. So our first speaker, we're going to be co-presenting today, is Laurie Mosher. She's a registered nurse and a certified specialist in poison information. Laurie is a graduate of nursing and health education from Dalhousie University and has worked at the IWK Health for 25 years, 21 years at the Atlantic Poison Center, which was formerly known as the IWK Regional Poison Center. She works directly with the poison telephone line and has a clear understanding of why unintentional poisonings happen. Laurie was a member of the Child Safety Link Advisory Council for more than 8 years and has collaborated with Child Safety Link on Poisoning Prevention Week each year and has advocated for public health policies aimed to prevent poisoning for more than 20 years. So welcome, Laurie.
Thank you.
And then I'm also going to be presenting today, so I'm going to introduce myself. So as mentioned, I'm the manager of Child Safety Link, and I have been in this position since 2002. And within those years, I have taught the health promotion policy and injury prevention courses at Dalhousie University. I do have a Master's of Science in Health Promotion and a Social Marketing Graduate Certificate. And I have worked in the field of health promotion and injury prevention for more than 25 years. So now that I feel old, I'm going to go to the next slide. We have 3 main learning objectives today. By the end of this presentation, our goal is that you will be able to define the meaning of a poison, to identify 3 ways to prevent a child from being poisoned in the home, and to recall the poison center number for your province. We had hoped for a pre-survey and a post-survey, but technology was not on our side. And so, however, I will reflect on these learning objectives at the end. So I'm going to hand this slide over to Laurie.
Thank you, Sandra. So the first objective is, what is a poison? It is something that can make you sick if you swallow, taste it, smell it, or get it on your skin or in your eye. And it can be a drug or non-drug substance. So example of a non-drug substance would be like a button battery, cleaning substance, and then the drugs, of course, over the counter and prescription medications. Next slide. So the Atlantic Canada Poison Center mandate strives to ensure optimal individualized care is provided in the event of a real or a potential poisoning. The poison team provides telephone advice to both the public and the healthcare professionals. So currently poison center specialists are nurses and pharmacists, and we also have medical consultants and toxicology support. So we are open 24/7 and we provide telephone-based care. Okay.
So thanks, Laurie. I'm going to now bring your attention to several recent documents that outline some poisoning statistics. And I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, but I thought it was important to sort of set the stage. Just a reminder, we will have these slides available, so you won't have to take any frantic notes. So the first one is that Children First Canada is a national charitable organization that works with many organizations and individuals to advocate for and with children and youth in Canada. They are committed to improving the health and well-being of young people across the country. They recently released their top 10 threats to children in Canada report. This was released just a few weeks ago. The number one threat outlined was unintentional injuries, and obviously poisoning is part of this report. So under poisonings, they captured several important bullets. One was during the pandemic, poisonings have increased for children of all age groups. In 2018, unintentional poisonings accounted for 12,312 visits to the emergency department in children 0 to 14. And from pre-pandemic, so they consider 2018, 2019 to the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, there was a 127.8% increase in unintentional poisonings. So I have linked to this report below, and you can obviously Google this and see what other statistics they outline. Now, just a few weeks ago, on October 4th, 2022, the Canadian Association of Poison Centers and Clinical Toxicologists, Health Canada, and Parachute, Canada's national charity dedicated to injury prevention, released the first pan-Canadian Poison Center annual report since 1987. Poisonings, particularly unintentional poisonings, is a much larger public health issue in Canada than is generally recognized. Poisoning incidents cost the Canadian economy $2.6 billion in a single year, including $456 million in direct healthcare costs. I'm going to talk about those costs in just a minute. The 2020 Pan-Canadian Poison Centre Annual Report includes the most current data from all 5 of Canada's poison centres. The report provides an overview of the number and nature of cases managed by poison centers across Canada and highlights the role of these centers in poisoning prevention efforts. So some of the important pieces they pull out was that in 2020, Canada's poison centers managed 589,000 cases. More than a third of the exposure cases managed, so about 64,527, these exposure cases involved children under the age of 5. The most common substances were medications for pain relief and household cleaning substances. So I will provide a link to this report later in these slides. The report also highlighted that most poisoning exposure cases are managed by the poison centers, so they are at home without requiring medical attention at the hospital, clinic, or doctor's office, which is very important. So I just mentioned a bit about the cost of injury nationally. So this is yet another new report that you may find of interest. It is called the Cost of Injury in Atlantic Canada report. So there was a national report released 2 years ago, and then this year we released a Cost of Injury in Atlantic Canada report. So I presented on this report in more detail at our first webinar, and those slides and recording are on the Child Safety Link website. So I'm not going to go into this very detailed, but this report examines data on injury across Atlantic Canada from 2018, the latest year for which complete statistics are available. It shows the economic cost of unintentional and inflicted injuries and the biggest causes of injury in Atlantic Canada. So this includes costs from societal perspective, including cost of the healthcare system and productivity. So you will see the definitions here. So briefly, direct costs will include any cost of the healthcare system, such as medical supplies, etc. And indirect costs looks at society productivity, loss of time work, disability, etc. So I'm not going to go through those, but they are all available at the link here. It's important for me to just let you know that this report is published online only. There's no hard copy of this report, and it's an interactive report. So the report is published online and it uses interactive data visualizations. So I'm going to show you a sample in a moment. But I did pull out unintentional injuries, the top cost by cause for children aged 0 to 14. So you can see here I've highlighted poisons is the fourth cost by cause. You will see here that unintentional poisonings are the fourth leading cost. And in 2018, poisonings cost Atlantic Canada $2.12 million. There was 51 children hospitalized and 816 emergency department visits. So as I just mentioned, this chart or this report is online only. And so this is what those charts look like. And so this is one example. So if you go to the cost of injury website, you can search by cause, by age. This is just one example you will see here. It's Atlantic Canada, cases by cause of injury and injury outcome, children 0 to 14, and you can see unintentional poisonings here. You can also search by individual province. So if you're in New Brunswick, you can click on the New Brunswick and you can search. So you can do this for all ages as well. So for this one, Laurie and I also thought you'd be interested in seeing some numbers for the calls that Atlantic Poison Center sees. So Laurie, I'll let you speak to this slide.
Yeah, sure. So this is 2021 and it's unintentional only. So over 2,200 calls related to cleaning substances, analgesics, and other products in age 0 to 4. They're at certainly highest risk of unintentional injuries. And then 399 in age 5 to 9. Foreign bodies, toys, miscellaneous things like glow sticks, button batteries. And then the 10 to 14 age group, it's 6%. So it's not a huge number of calls, but most of them tend to be more like double doses of their medication and then getting into cannabis, not knowing that the cannabis was in the gummy or the food product. So this I'd just like to say thanks to Ashley for providing the statistics for this. Okay, so next slide. So each year we celebrate National Poison Prevention Week, and we have a different theme each year. And in 2022, March, Tuesday the third week in March, we took the approach of myth versus reality. So we made up several of these myth versus reality that were shared on social media. So here's one: my child can't get into childproof containers. And the reality is there's no such thing as childproof. The poison centers, we've seen children as young as 1 year old get into containers, and they're really called child resistant, which is not 100% proof. Next slide. So here's a good example. We had a call from a parent of a 13-month-old, 16-pound child. Just about 10 minutes prior to calling the poison center, the child grabbed the bottle of infant Tylenol liquid and opened it and drank an unknown amount. So speaking with the parent, we were able to calculate, the potential amount of acetaminophen the child could have ingested based on the body weight and any previous doses in the past 24 hours. And the poison specialist had determined that it was, in fact, a potentially toxic amount of acetaminophen. The child was referred to the emergency department. The poison specialist also advised the healthcare professionals in the emergency department what blood work to do and what treatment. A special note is acetaminophen is the #1 cause of acute liver failure in Canada caused by medications. So it's really important that poison specialists make these calculations and determine if treatment is needed. In this case, the child's acetaminophen level was non-toxic and the child was sent home. Next slide. So another myth that we encounter is cannabis is not a poison. And in fact, reality, a poison is anything that can make you sick if you eat it, drink it, inhale it, touch it. This includes cannabis products. So there's a number of issues with cannabis. There can be a time delay in the children coming to the emergency department. Sometimes parents don't even know the child ingested the product. Another thing is sometimes parents wait and then the child becomes drowsy and gives us a call. And researching on the internet can lead to inaccurate advice, like making the child throw up, which we don't recommend, or sometimes not even related to cannabis, but the internet can say something's extremely toxic when it's not. So this is an important myth buster that we felt that was important. Next slide. So myth, kids can tell the difference between cannabis edibles and real candy food. In fact, the reality is that kids and adults can be fooled by cannabis lookalikes. So the next slide will show you, these are actual calls that we got to the poison center. So 3 out of 6 of these products actually contain cannabis. So Mary Jane's Fuzzy Peach, it's the one on the top, has cannabis. There's no way I would know the difference of that. Starburst gummies, it's the one on the top. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and it's the one on the left. Very difficult to tell the difference between the two. So we'll go on to the next slide and we'll give you a case study of a actual case we did. And this involved the Mary Jane's Fuzzy Peach gummies. So we received a call about a 10-year-old child who was brought to the emergency department after the parent found the child sleepy. Their eyes were red and the child was acting stoned. The child went into the cupboard and found and ate a package of Mary Jane's Fuzzy Peach candies. The package contained 350 milligrams total in 5 gummies. This is a huge dose of THC or cannabis. The child was monitored in the hospital for 24 hours until the symptoms resolved. The parents thought that the child was safe because the package was hidden in the cupboard up high, and it was purchased online. Legal Health Canada approved products do not have packaging that resembles candy. Next slide. So this is a myth. Keeping cannabis out of reach is enough to keep kids safe. The reality is out of reach is not enough, especially with the older kids, older than 6, that can climb. All cannabis products should be stored in a labeled package, locked cupboards, boxes, or bags. Children will go to extreme measures to eat candy. If it's in the cupboard, they will find it. And so here's a case study that we got. It's another a packaged candy that looks like a Halloween treat. An adult caregiver and 3 children shared a package of cannabis gummies, not knowing they were cannabis. Package contained 500 milligrams total. Each gummy was 100 milligrams, called Stoner Patch gummies. All were having symptoms, including the caregiver, and the children would be in the age between 5 and 14. The 5-year-old was hospitalized for 22 hours before returning back to normal. So the child was, experienced significant drowsiness. What we're finding is the younger the child is, the more effects that they have. And this is a combination of their weight, their age, and the fact they're not cannabis users. So next slide.
So thank you, Laurie. We did feel that showing some case studies was really important, just to demonstrate just how fast some of these poisonings can happen, and it really does bring home the importance of prevention. So I'm going to focus on a few prevention strategies and that'll be the focus of our next couple slides. And as Laurie has already said, she said children younger than 1, but we have children 5 and younger are more at risk for poisonings because, as you know, children at that age love to explore the world by putting things in their mouths, and so they are at particular risk. So the 3 ways to prevent and reduce the likelihood of a poisoning in the home, we say lock it, store it, lock it, label it. And so I'm going to give you some very specific examples around these 3 key strategies. So The first one is keep medication, cleaning products, and other toxins in their original child-resistant labeled packaging. So I have an example, and I haven't shared this with Laurie yet, but I do have an example that I feel is really an excellent example of why. So when you take poisonings out of their original containers, you can have some issues. So I will never forget, and this was a long time ago, but I had a discussion with a mother, and she told me her child had been poisoned once. But luckily he was okay after going to the hospital. And when I asked the circumstances of the poisoning, she told me that her son had drank motor oil. And I thought, well, I wonder how that happened. So after more conversation, she said that her husband was working in the garage and he changed the oil in his truck. And he put the old oil in a Coke bottle and never thought the child would drink it. The child was able to get into the garage and drank the oil and chugged it right down, thinking it was pop. So luckily, the child was okay after being taken to the hospital, but the mother said she was really surprised. And her reasoning was that she said she was really surprised her child drank the Coke, what he thought was Coke, because he only liked Pepsi. So this was another surprise to me. So I think, though, it's a really important example of how often we think our young children can read or they will know what the difference. But as Laurie showed in a lot of those, those cannabis packaging, a child is not going to know the difference, let alone some of them you'd really have to look hard to know that it was cannabis. So it's just really important. I felt that case really demonstrated that they recognized the container and they thought it was pop and they drank it. And so I think that's a really important example to share. The next point refers to the first one is never store non-food toxic products in old food containers like a pop bottle or in places where food would normally be like a fridge. Excuse me. Do not rely on child-proof, as Laurie emphasized, or child-resistant packaging alone, because children can get into these things very quickly. Also, store medication, cleaning products, and other toxins in locked, high, and other places that young people will not be able to reach. So you may put your cannabis products up high, but as Laurie demonstrated, they might get into it. And so we know, as Laurie mentioned, even talking about the child-proof containers or child-resistant containers, that children as young as 2 and 1 have been able to get into these. But with the cannabis, sometimes people make their homemade cannabis, so you might have cannabis cookies or brownies, and you need to label that and you need to lock it up, because if a child sees that, they're just going to think brownies or cookies. They're not going to think that it's necessarily cannabis. We also recommend that you don't take poisonings like cleaners out of the original containers, because obviously there could be a mix-up, or we say look-alike issue. But we do know that often people buy things in bulk, like laundry detergent, and then transfer it into a portable container. So this does need to be labeled very clearly so everyone knows what it is. In terms of some more prevention strategies, there are many items commonly carried in purses that could injure a child or poison a child. For example, nicotine products, pills, hand sanitizers, cosmetics, etc. So keep your handbag and those of your guests up high and out of reach of children. If you do use alcohol or cannabis products of any kind, keep them locked up. And if you know or even suspect that your child has eaten or drank a poison, call the poison center immediately for advice. As Laurie said, don't Google it, don't wait, just call the poison center and they'll be able to give you the advice that you need. There are several numbers. So first in Nova Scotia, it's 1-800-565-8161. That's in Nova Scotia and PEI. And then in Newfoundland, you can call 1-844-POISON-X, and Poison X is 1-844-764-7699. So to bring the presentation to a conclusion, I just wanted to bring to your attention that Child Safety Link has several educational resources that you can print off our website. So you can go to our website and you can click on poison prevention. We do have a new website, and so we encourage you to go there. And this is just an example of a couple handouts that we have. We also have a link here to the Atlantic Poison Center, just to see all the great information they have on their website. I also have the link to the Pan-Canadian Poison Center annual report that I spoke of earlier. And the last link is a resource from Parachute Canada, and it's entitled Evidence Summary on the Prevention of Poisonings in Canada. And that's several years old, but it's a great document. Okay, so we're going to go back to and reflect on our learning objectives. So I would love you to add your answers in the chat to make it a little bit more interactive if you can. So the first learning objective is to define the meaning of a poison. I will give you just a few seconds to type in your answers.
Sandra, there is a question in the chat about a phone number. Did you want to wait until you got to that learning objective to address it, or?
I'm going to reflect on the learning objectives, so I'll show the number
Okay,
again.
great.
Oh, I see Sarah Blades answered the question. Thank you very much, Sarah. The next learning objective is to identify 3 ways to prevent a child from being poisoned in the home. I see some activity in the chat. Thank you, everybody. And the last, thank you, Jill. The last objective is to recall the Poison Center phone number for your province. So I know it's hard to remember numbers, so I will talk about that in a moment. Thank you, everyone, for your comments in the chat. Wonderful. Jill knew the number. I knew she would.
Good thing.
Okay. Yes. Oh, thank you. No numbers given for New Brunswick. So, that's right. Thank you for catching that. I'll let Laurie address that in a moment then. So the first one is to define the meaning of a poison. A poison is something that can make you sick if swallowed. If you swallow it, taste it, smell it, get it on your skin, get it in your eye. It can be a drug or non-drug substance. The second one is to identify 3 ways to prevent a child from being poisoned in the home. And I know we have gave lots of examples, but essentially it's store it high, lock it high and away, and label it, especially for cannabis edibles. And the Poison Center number for your province. And I apologize that I don't know how New Brunswick wasn't there. These are the numbers, but Laurie, did you want to talk about the New Brunswick number?
So for New Brunswick, we cover healthcare professionals only. The public poison center information is covered by their 811. That can be accessed either by dialing 811 or 911.
So I will add that to the slides. So when they're saved on our website, that information will be there. So thank you, everyone. So now it's a time for questions. We have lots of time. We wanted to give lots of time for questions. So Samantha, are there any in the chat? And I see Sarah's hand is up. So Sarah, did you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for spending the time on poisons. And I noticed that we looked at cannabis in our case studies mostly. The cannabis products that were in the case studies were super high potency. And I'm curious if you can tell me what proportion, or is it common to have calls about cannabis products that are less than 10 milligrams per serving? Or is it always usually these like super high potency cannabis products?
That's a very good question. And, just from reviewing the charts, most of the products that cause significant drowsiness were products that were ordered online that do not meet Health Canada's guidelines for packaging. So less than 10 milligrams, plain packaging.
Right.
Most of them were purchased online, and often people tell us as well on the call that they were given the package by a friend, they didn't know that it was, there's different reasons. Sometimes it's homemade products, but most of the time it is packaging that is appealing. And one of the things that we do at the Poison Centers, we do often submit reports if there's a child that was poisoned from one of these products. We have a way of submitting a report on that, and then it goes to various people, including Health Canada, the police, which will investigate where they purchased it from. Because if it's purchased online, there's really no way of knowing, it may say it has 50 milligrams, it could be 100 milligrams, it could be 25 milligrams. There's food regulations that go into the Health Canada's guidelines, it's quite tight. There's tax regulations. I know that from my son who works for CRA, but yeah, so there's a lot of things. And also, if there's a contaminated product and it's a legit product, they have to have recalls in place. They have to have a system in place. So I don't think the public always knows when they order stuff online that they're taking a risk in many different ways.
For sure. I think that's also an opportunity to think about strengthening the Cannabis Act too. So there's a review right now open for the first review of the Cannabis Act, and comments are due by November 21st if people are interested, but I'd encourage you to check it out. But it's something we need to preserve, I think. Thank you.
Yes. You're right for sure, Sarah.
Were there any questions in the chat box, Samantha?
There's no questions in the chat so far.
It's a great opportunity. You have a C-SPY right here to answer your questions.
On the call.
Yes, we have several on the call.
One of the things I did ask our epidemiologist to do some statistics on unintentional cannabis edibles, so only in the form of food products. And from the years 2013 to 2016, in ages 14 and under, there were 0 calls to the Poison Center. And then it has slowly gone up. So 2018, there was 9 calls. 2020, there was 26. 2021, there was 50. And as of the end of September 2022, there's 46. So these are unintentional only in children 14 and under. And quite a majority of them end up having to be in the hospital for several hours. We've seen small children be hospitalized for a day and up to 3 days, because it's significant drowsiness and other issues that can happen. So our statistics are showing that it is on the increase as more people are accessing the cannabis products. And there's other issues besides cannabis, of course, laundry pods and cleaners, Yeah.
So as Laurie mentioned earlier, Child Safety Link and the Poison Center team up every year, and we promote Poison Awareness Week, which is the 3rd week of March, and we will be doing that again this year. I know we haven't come to a conclusion on our theme yet, but if anyone is interested in promoting poisoning prevention in their family resource center or their agency, just let us know, and we'd be happy to share resources. Okay, one last call for questions before I conclude. I have a few additional slides. Okay, well, you'll have a few more minutes to think about it. I'm just going to conclude with a few more slides. So again, I just want to thank everyone for attending. Really appreciate your participation. As mentioned, you're going to find this presentation. I will make that revision and add the New Brunswick information. I apologize for missing that. And that those slides, as well as the recording, will be on our website within the next couple of days. As mentioned, this is a webinar series. This is the 4th of 6, so we do have 2 more webinars coming up. Our next one is called Evaluation 101, What You Need to Know, with Dorian Watts from the Canadian Evaluation Society, the Nova Scotia chapter. So we're looking forward to that one. And thirdly, Child Safety Link, we're going to be developing a community of practice. I've mentioned this a few times in other presentations, but we're developing a community of practice, or a COP, and this is going to be a safe space where professionals, including those of you, obviously professionals who work with young families, who can discuss child and youth injury prevention issues, learn about Child Safety Link resources and each other's resources, and other things that we may have to offer, and also an opportunity to problem solve and get ideas. So this community of practice is still in development. Our goal is to have it launched on our birthday on November 20th. And so if you are interested in joining that community of practice, feel free to put your contact information in the chat box right now, or you can email me and I'd be happy to put you on the list when we get ready to launch. I've also included here our general email line, which is checked daily, our website, and Facebook and other accounts. I've also included a link to all of the Child Safety Link services that we have to offer in a summary. So just a last call for questions, and then we will wrap up a little bit early, which is not a bad thing. Any other questions?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining us. Laurie, if you don't mind staying on the line just a few more minutes. And take care, everyone, and I hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Thank you.